Hi, Paul. How's
Hi,
it going?
Paul.
How are you?
Good. I didn't sound quite right there. Did you did
I
you
pressed
mess,
the wrong button.
did you mess
Um,
the intro up again?
no, the intro's all good. We're all good. All the screw ups happened before we went live.
Okay. All right. Uh,
So, hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode.
ask the right question.
Ask the right questions. It's late. We're doing this later than we normally do, and so I'm a little loopy. There you go.
Good.
That said, it's good that I'm a little loopy because the idea for this show came from a tweet that I saw the other day, which I thought was really funny. So I'll read it out. It's from HubSpot, obviously. Well, not obviously, but it's from HubSpot. And so they were kind of kidding around saying, a day in the life of a sales leader. Beg sales rep to update the CRM, patch together forecasts, complain about lead flow, tweet about hating sales CRM, scramble for pipeline check-in, stare at screen and feel overwhelmed, reschedule closing calls. Does that sound familiar to you, Paul?
Yes, it does. I honestly, apart from tweeting, because when I was a sales leader, I wasn't tweeting, but apart from that, it's pretty damn accurate.
Yeah, I thought so. I mean, having worked with a lot of sales leaders, like obviously on the marketing side, but having worked with them, I could see that a lot of it was that. I got a lot of the complaining about the lead flow. I definitely know that's true.
Well, totally. But let's face it, you know what you're supposed to do. There's reality, and then there's what you should be doing or how you should be doing it. But things are. It's sort of here. I'll put it to you this way. You know, when you look at that commercial and the family's off on a vacation and they're driving through the mountains and they're playing I Spy, whatever, and everyone's smiling and everyone looks clean. Well, let's face it, the reality the reality of it's you got one hand behind you because one of your kids doesn't have his seatbelt on and they spilt their ice cream on your shirt and you're trying to drive through the mountains and it's pouring rain and you're still going there. It's still going to be fun, but you're never perfect, so you have to make do with the little the impromptu things that happen in your day that throw you off, right? You can't have everything planned, and it's not going to run perfectly as to plan, So yes, so that's my analogy.
Yeah, I mean that's a great one, right? And I mean, obviously, like the idea came from the sales leader tweet, but like marketing leaders have the same thing, right? Like, yeah, ideally you want to spend like part of your time coaching your team and like building your strategy and like checking out on the reports. But the reality is like there's like fires to put out. All of a sudden your sales leader is freaking out about the lead flow. And so you got to go talk to your team and figure out what are we doing next? Talk him or her off the ledge and whatever. So it's, obviously there's reality, right? There's the day to day of stuff that happens or doesn't happen in the day. But in an ideal world, and let's talk about the ideal world so that we our sales leaders that listen to us maybe have something to strive towards or whatever. In an ideal world, what should a sales leader, and let's talk about, we talked about sales leader, but like the manager, really, the person that's kind of in between the upper echelons of the company and the salespeople who are on the road or on the phone or whatever. Like what should their day look like?
Well, this is where it's going to be a little controversial. What I'm going to tell you is a little controversial, but it's also true. So whether you're a marketing manager, whether you're a sales leader, whether you're managing accountants, whether you're managing teachers, the common element there that creates a lot of ruffles is the human being, right?
Yeah.
The beautiful thing in sales is that you get to have a relationship with another human being and you're selling them something they need. The terrible thing about sales is you have a relationship with a human being. And so whether it's sales or anything, I think if you're a manager and you expect to have that perfect day, like, I'm going to come in and I'm going to check the CRM and all my reps will have filled up their pipeline projections and they'll be up to date and I'm going to be able to give my VP or the owner of the company the data required for them to go and make the next purchasing. All these things are the technical aspects, the sort of non-emotional, non-human being related things that you must do. But the reality of it, when you're a manager, you're spending a lot of time talking to human beings and helping them get motivated, helping them achieve their objectives, and helping them to strive to have the habits that will get them to the success they need.
Mm-hmm.
So as a logical sales manager, let's say you're a sales manager working in a good company and you only have, you have a maximum of direct reports of, let's say, 7 salespeople, and you're a manager. Well, you're going to be spending most of your time, or 50% of your time at least, managing them, helping them, coaching them in things that they need to move forward with. So I think a typical day in a sales manager's life, if he has those 7 people, well, he probably has one-on-one that day. He might have that sales meeting that day. He might be going on a client meeting that day. He might be, getting them to do their pipeline evaluations or whatnot. But the typical day will involve you coaching someone and helping them move forward.
Yeah.
If you get pleasure out of that, if you get happiness out of helping someone move forward and achieve their objective, you will be a happy manager. If you're a very overly analytical person who only cares about the results and what you can do, you will most likely be an unhappy sales manager because let's face it, most human beings need help. They need coaching. They're not perfect. If life was perfect, you and I wouldn't have a job. We would do this training once. We would go out there. Everyone would know how to do it. And you wouldn't need sales training anymore. You wouldn't need marketing training anymore. You wouldn't need to talk about marketing. You wouldn't need to talk about these things because human beings continuously need to be encouraged and helped along. So to come back to my point, I think the ideal sales manager understands, first of all, his people's objectives, what motivates them, and how to get them to where they want to go and how that'll benefit your company. Because people are all about themselves first.
Yeah.
Do I want, and how does my company help me get there? If you understand that about your people, you're going to help them help the company.
Yeah. Interesting.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense because, obviously, it'd be nice to be able to say, okay, like you said, I'm going to come in, look at I'll realize that, XYZ is struggling a bit because of their numbers in their CRM. And so I'm going to have a impromptu one-on-one and coach them and help them. That's the ideal, right? But then the reality is you come in and then you realize 3 of the 7 didn't update their numbers last night. And so the CRM's out of date. And then at the same time, your VP is saying, why are the numbers out? And so you're scrambling, the reality comes in. But I think ultimately, I like what you said. And if I understood it correctly, it's a people first thing. And if you come in with that frame of mind that you're a people first in a people first, not business, but position, it'll be a lot easier because at the end of the day, it's about getting these people motivated and stimulated and whatnot to get to work, right?
Well, and look, that's my perspective. I mean, I don't know. Do you agree with that? Because you were a marketing manager. Is that the reality in your world when everything fell apart? And did you put the people first? Did you put the company first? And one doesn't have to. I shouldn't say that. It's not like people first or the company first. But I think if you put people first, it'll take care of the company. Richard Branson said that. He said, take care of your employees first, and they'll take care of the company.
Yeah, and obviously, you do your best, But I think, obviously, sales and marketing are different fields. I think in marketing, ideally, what you want to do is hire somebody that's, great at what they do. So if it's a lead generation thing, or if it's a copywriting thing and stuff like that. And so you kind of want to be able to trust that they know what to do. And then you could focus a bit more on the coaching and the things like that, But I think it's all about people first, right? If you treat people with respect and if you build trust and build rapport with them and this and that, when things get tough, okay, we need to launch this campaign tomorrow, people are willing to put in a bit more when they need to. Whereas if you're always just the number first and the this and the that, so it gets a little bit more challenging.
And it's true that all the tools that go around the people, whether it's the CRM or the administrative system or the ERP, whatever it might be, or the marketing system or the marketing tools or the lack thereof resources, because everyone who's there long enough, well, if the company did this, it would be better. But that's all managing people, because there's no company that's perfect. Apple's
Right.
not perfect. I'm sure you can go right now to, to California and sit in the lobby and find some disgruntled employee who's pissed off because some resource or another didn't work. But that's the reality of work. So whether it's your CRM or anything, there's always going to be something that's clunky or not working well. There's two things you need to do. You need to understand your people's objectives and motivation, but you also sometimes need to put your foot down and say, your employees need to understand the reality. Like, look,
Yeah.
this is the resources we have. This is the data we're working with. This is reality. How are we going to make this work with what we have right now?
Yeah.
So you've got that sort of range of human beings too, right? You always let's say you have a team of 7, you always have 1 or 2 that are, a royal pain. And then, you have a few of them that are, just in the sweet spot, and then maybe 1 or 2 of them that are, you don't have to talk to them. They just know what to do, right?
Yeah.
And so there's that connection. I think as a manager, you're always connecting reality of your tools, your resources, the CRM, the company, what you're selling, whatnot, to the reality of the human beings that are working for you, right?
Yeah.
And we talked about this last week, and I think I even tweeted something on LinkedIn. Not tweeted. I wrote something
on LinkedIn.
on LinkedIn. That's
At the end of the day for everybody, Paul. It's okay.
I wrote something on LinkedIn to the effect that if you're very realistic in when you're hiring your people, and you're really realistic to the reality of that company, they won't be disappointed when they walk in. And if they're the right fit, you'll probably have less of those pain in the ass people, right? Because you sort of, you spelled it out and you showed reality for what it was. So I think the everyday task of an organized sales manager is to make sure everything's in line and that the numbers are there, that he's fulfilling, giving the data that needs to the powers that be, that he's motivating his team, and that he's always there to be 1, a coach, and 2, a cheerleader, and 3, a guy who keeps him accountable.
Yeah.
I'll be your coach, I'll be your cheerleader, but you got to do what you said you're going to do, right?
Yeah.
And those are the 3 important things, as a sales manager, that you always have to keep your eye on. Now, we could talk about scheduling meetings. I firmly believe that you should have a one-on-one meeting with all of your team members. If you have 50 team members, it might be impossible, but let's just say you've got a team of 5 to 7 people. You should have one-on-ones once a week. You should be doing, I believe in, there's quite a few people they call it, the wake-up call, or the one of my clients has another name for it, which I really like. It's like the huddle, the morning huddle. And that's good too. It just gets people fired up in the morning, particularly in COVID times when you're not motivated. So I think you should have that. And then you should be doing your sales. If it's a sales meeting, you should be doing your sales meeting once a week. And then you're maybe doing ride-alongs with your people, or right now, or Zoom-alongs. So you should have a structure.
Yeah.
But you should know that structure is always. There's always something's going to happen. There's always someone who has to go to the dentist's office. There's always someone's kid who's sick. There's always someone's dog that died. There's always someone, someone's grandmother died. Someone's car broke down. Someone missed their flight. Someone, that's always going to happen. That's human nature. So that thing you need to be most prepared for is that human nature, that connection that you need to make and understand and be aware of, that's going to happen. Probably the larger your team, the more often it's going to happen. The smaller your team, the more you can maybe control it. But if your team, also if you're a leader, if you're a VP and you have 5 managers that report to you and they have 7 people reporting to them, well then there's even more unknowns and even more things going on that you have to be ready to deal with, right?
Yeah. No, you're completely right. And I mean, again, it's like, it's the same in marketing. I mean, in Boyles, obviously we don't have the ride-alongs or the Zoom-alongs necessarily, but, I think it's the same in marketing, right? And I like the way you put it, right? There's the coaching and the, not celebrating, the cheerleading, but there's the accountability too, right? And I think those are kind of almost, I would say, universal. And maybe this is a bit off track, but, in marketing, I think one element that's really important, that's often forgotten, and I'll be completely honest, it's an element that I've often forgotten, is that, internal marketing, right? Like marketing, like explaining to people what marketing does, what's marketing doing. That's where that cheerleading comes in a lot, right? Like this person did a lot of this and this person a lot of that. And we're doing this week, and we're going to be launching this campaign this month, and this, and that's, I think that's also a big part of what a marketing leader should be doing, marketing manager, is
explaining to the rest of the company what marketing actually does, right? And how it's going to benefit the company. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, and part of that is also, and I know, again, depending on the size of the organization, there's part of that is also tying what you're doing to objectives and stuff like that. Like, obviously it's a bigger organization. It's probably not top down, but definitely coming from somewhere else. But a smaller organization, like, they should also be working with sales to determine, okay, well, you know what, marketing will own this metric that's related to, you know, what sales.
Okay, but now you're getting into the details. So
right,
and that's good. And I think we should talk about that one time. But is the day in the life of a marketing manager similar to the day in the life of a sales leader? I mean, I think so, right? I mean, from what you're saying, it's
on a high level, I would say it's very similar. Obviously, there's day-to-day differences, right? You have your Zoom-alongs and you know, like the marketing manager.
No, I mean more at a level where you have a bunch of meetings and you have a bunch of data, but you know, the human being is always going to, you know, throw things off, and you always have to be ready for that human aspect, you know?
Exactly. And, you know, like the website goes down and you know, there's a lot of other type of stuff that a marketing manager will deal with. But I think fundamentally, if you could boil it down to, if you can spend a decent amount of time coaching and cheerleading and holding accountable, I think you're on a good track. Obviously, there's like, the whole data part. There's everything that you need, but I find a lot of it becomes easier when you're able to put the team first, right?
Yeah.
Like, more people are more willing to share more information if they feel trusted and supported and whatnot. Then, you know, if you're just going back to them always like the data, you know, it's a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, interesting.
And how much was that?
Go ahead.
No, I was saying, like, I think a big part of it is how much time you also spend. And I don't know if it has to be daily. I mean, obviously it's kind of the name of the title of the show, but not the show, but the episode. But I think there's also a decent amount of time that the sales manager has to work with the sales manager as well. The marketing manager and the sales manager have to work together, right? I think it's more and more. I mean, we've been saying for a long time that it's more and more important, but it's becoming to the point where it's critical. And if it's like those two groups don't talk to each other well and they don't understand each other well, there's going to be challenges. And a lot of the challenges happen from that miscommunication, misunderstanding between the two groups.
I want to, you know, in the old days, it was often VP sales and marketing, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about the change, because a lot's changed in the last 5 years, right? Yeah. So how do you see that relationship now? Do you still believe, and I'm asking this, do you still believe in the VP sales and marketing, or do you think those two things should be separate, or do you think there are people that can actually do both?
I mean, I guess it would depend on the size of the organization and what the person's role is, because I just say that because sometimes, like, you know, I'm the CMO, but there's like 3 people in the company and I'm the only marketer. But assuming there's a decent enough size, I think bringing those groups together, and I would even bring in maybe customer service into the flow as well, I don't know if integrating them is a must, but they definitely need to be close, because when you think about them, those are your main 3 sources of revenue, right? Obviously, sales is the most directly related to new revenue, depending on how the organization is set up, repeat revenue as well. But, you know, marketing's efforts are definitely helped by sales efforts are definitely helped by marketing's effort. And customer service, right? If you pass then the puck to the customer service and they keep dropping the ball, sales is going to have a harder time and your revenue is going to be impacted. So I think there's room to incorporate the 3 under one title. Again, but depending on the size of the organization, right? Like,
yeah. So let's talk about that for a second. So let's say it's a small company that can't afford to have a VP marketing, a VP sales, and a VP customer service. They might have to all be under one roof. And let's face it, at that level, for the owner, what he cares most about, what most business care most about, is sales, right?
Right.
So does that mean
or revenue? Let's put it that way.
revenue? Thank you. When I say sales, that's what I mean. I apologize.
Okay.
I don't mean the salespeople, the sales team, but revenue. Like, so ultimately, and I'm asking this honestly, do you find sometimes marketing is left aside or not thought of correctly in these, let's say, smaller, medium-sized companies where they just see it, okay, all we need are outbound sales and, a website and everything's going to happen. Like, how do you, maybe I'm getting off topic here a little bit, but how do those live together? And in the larger companies where you do have the separate titles, I have a hard time understanding how those how a company can work without those two or those three being completely linked. Because if they aren't, there's a disconnect, right? It's sort of like saying, well, my stomach says I'm hungry and my legs say they want to go running. But, to me, marketing and sales are like one body. They don't work together. I mean,
Exactly. And I think like if you separate them too much, so first to answer your question, yes, I think marketing is often neglected a bit. And, I think part of it is marketing's fault. Like I was talking before, like there are not enough internal marketing efforts to explain what we're doing. There's not enough efforts to align our marketing efforts to important metrics for the company. But I think it is neglected. And I think this idea that like marketing does marketing and sales closes and then, customer service like just helps the customers is I think that's a bit antiquated. I think now it's like if you have one person doesn't have to be one person, like we said, it could be a tightly knit group, but if the focus goes to, well, let's focus more on the customer and what they need and what they want and how we can drive revenue from them, as opposed to let's close them and then let's like repeat sales from them and, let's generate leads. And so I think that's a bit antiquated. I think if you have one group or one person or whatever thinking of like, let's look at the customer and what they need, I think then it makes more sense that those three groups are integrated. I think where it's harder to picture is when those three groups are completely independent and marketing does this and sales does that and customer service does this and it's all discombobulated and whatnot. But I think if you bring it back to, well, what do they ultimately all do? They all drive revenue through helping out clients, right?
Yeah. And I find that really fascinating. Just last week, I did the customer journey with one of my clients, and we were starting and said, so let's talk about the customer journey first, because everything sort of stems from there. I mean, operations will stem from there. Manufacturing will stem from there. Marketing, everything. It's all about what is it that the customer. So that's really good. And Fab, one thing we don't often talk about, and I wonder if we should in the next session. Sorry, I don't mean to go off topic here, but first thing I should say is I totally agree with you. I think that if those are working apart and they're discombobulated, you're probably working in a discombobulated company.
Yeah.
So if they work together as one unit of a body, well then as a unit, like when I say a body, I mean something that flows together like a human body.
Yeah.
And then it'll work. But one thing that you and I haven't often talked about, and I'm wondering if we should talk about it eventually, is how operations, if it's manufacturing, or how operations comes in, like the content of what you're if it's media, you're delivering content. If it's manufacturing, you're delivering a widget, and how that ties in. That's the heart. But we probably should talk about how that ties into the reality of what it is that marketing, customer service, and sales are trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, again, like in terms of like a lot of it, I'm not that always familiar with like production, like manufacturing and stuff like that. But I know in software, there's an increasing trends to what they call like, product-led growth, where it's about, well, let's grow this organization through making this product as intuitive and as growth driven as possible, right? So instead of me having to send you like 75 emails about like how to use my product and this and that, and like, oh, it's not clear and it's just hard to use, and like I need to fill out 16 forms to get to my this. Let's build a product that makes it so that it's like oh, now I want to click here. Okay, now I need to upgrade for this. That makes sense. And you know what I mean? And so I think ultimately, if and I understand, I realize that manufacturing and all that are very different, but I think maybe there's some of that at play as well, where it's like, if my manufacturing process is built so as to make it easier for my customer to achieve their goals, I think there's something to be said there.
Yeah, and I want to talk about this eventually too, because I think a lot of people create something,
Yeah,
and they go out and sell it. And
yeah,
they think, oh, because I created something, people want to buy it. But they were just lucky that they created something that people wanted
yeah,
or needed, right? And
yeah,
I would even say that about the iPhone. You know, people say, oh, Steve Jobs created a market with the iPhone. No, he just realized that people would be happy to have a thing that you can make a phone call on, listen to listen to your favorite music, and
yeah,
also do your emails with, right?
yeah,
BlackBerry had done the email and the calling before, and then he said, hey, I could bring in music into that, and I can bring in fun and pleasure, and then it becomes one unit. So it's still something that people, they didn't know they wanted, but when they saw it, it's like, oh, this feeds a desire that I have.
yeah.
So so should we wrap this up, because we're going all over?
We are. But again, it reminds me a bit of our early shows where we would go all over the place. So, that's what I was kind of hoping with this one. Let's just have a free for all and a day in the life of a sales and marketing manager. That was fun.
Here we are.
One thing that you wanted to tell me,
we're all over the place. There we go. Maybe that's a reality. Sales guys are all over the place, and the marketing guys all over the place, right? Because we're talking about everything.
But one thing we talked about offline quickly that we wanted to bring up, and maybe we'll do kind of a more full episode or something, is part of our text messaging group and the text messaging platform or whatever, was kind of saying that, they not necessarily having a hard time, but like definitely been challenging moving everything from face to face to kind of online and virtual. And so this is clearly not a day in the life, but we could tie it back by saying maybe it's part of coaching and whatnot. But what's your, and again, maybe there's a broader topic here, but what's your take on that difficulty from switching? And I'm guessing maybe a lot more for sales than for marketing.
I think it is mainly a sales thing, because, with COVID, obviously, you can't go visit people as much. Some people don't want to see you. Yes, well, in Canada anyways, you are allowed to go see your clients. You have to wear a mask. But the way I see it, and let's face it, you and I have been virtual for longer than the time that COVID was on. So
yeah,
I've been doing a lot of stuff virtually. I think it's a state of mind, honestly. Well, there's a few basic elements, though. Okay, and this can sound really simplistic, but you need to have really good Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
You need to have a good computer, and you need to be able to see very well on the screen. So I'm one of these people, and it's going to sound very stupid, but I'm nearsighted. So I see close very well. So this is good. I don't need to wear my glasses on. But if you're farsighted, have your glasses on. Make sure you really see clearly what's going on, because all the facial features, all the nonverbals that are going on, you need to see them. And that's what's going to make you feel like you're in a real conversation. So right now I'm looking at you, I see your face, I see your mouth, I see your eyes, I see you're looking down. I can see when you're distracted. I can see, when you're agreeing with something. And that's where you got to tell yourself, I'm looking for these cues. So you don't just stare at yourself to make sure you don't have something stuck in your eye or your ear, but you're really looking at
something stuck in your eye. You might have
or in your mustache or in your nose, God forbid. But really not pretend, but make it as though you're in front of the person. At first it's a little bit of acting, but with time you become more comfortable with that. And I can even say that, I've been doing this now doing a lot of video interaction for probably over 2 years, and I'm pretty comfortable. I often even forget that you and I are not in the same room.
Yes, it's true.
And I think it's a habit thing. It's sort of like, if we'd spoken to our great grandparents who were using the phone for the first time in 1910 or whatever it was, they're probably totally discombobulated talking on the phone.
Yeah.
So it's creating that habit. So, and I think I know who gave that text. So, I'm talking to you directly. Practice. Do the Zoom calls. And it's not like doing a Zoom call with a family member. Because a family member, you're often hugging them, you're doing other stuff. But often in a sales call, you are very focused and you are sitting in a chair. So you should theoretically be able to have pretty close interaction as you would have with someone who's sitting right in front of you.
Right.
You know, it's very rare with your family that, okay, let's sit down at the conference room table and we're having a discussion.
Yeah.
But honestly, in business meetings, you're often doing that. You're sitting down at the conference table and then you're saying, oh, can you please look here at my presentation? Well, then you're doing it, you know, you're showing your presentation on the screen. So it's a building a habit. Pretend you're in the same room. You know, I don't know. You're doing this too. What's your suggestion?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same. It is practice. I mean, it was a bit awkward at first, especially if you don't do it as much. And I had a few clients, especially bigger clients, that I would go see regularly, sometimes a few times a week, to work with them, and then things switched to online. It is practice. It's. I think the more you do it, I think what made me more comfortable is just doing kind of our shows on a weekly basis, and also I have a French show that I do almost on a daily basis, and so that just being in front of the camera more.
You speak French?
Oui, oui.
Wow.
Just doing it as often as possible is helpful.
Yeah.
And actually, even like, and for some of the people I know, and people in the group definitely know, like I've been recording myself doing cold calls, right? And so it's just, and it's silly, right? I mean, obviously, you don't have to be as silly as me, and then actually share the recording.
Face it, Bob, you're an exhibitionist.
But you know, I find like just sometimes having Zoom open and I could see myself, even if I don't record it, helps just training yourself and being in front of the camera. But fundamentally, and maybe this is obvious at this point, like we're doing this in October, mid-October. But I read out not long ago on LinkedIn, the CMO was saying, like, kind of message to all salespeople, right? If you're not even turning on your camera, you pretty much lost the deal before it even started. Because, and I heard somebody else saying, like, somebody wanted to have a call, and I was like, thrown off. Like, let's just have a video conference. Like, I think people are looking for that rapport as much as they can, and so the more comfortable you are on camera, the better it is. And so I would say practice and just record yourself. You don't have to share it.
Fab, that's so insightful. I love it. You said something that even better. Record yourself, but look, have your camera on and practice. So when you're making a phone call, just have your camera on and look. If you're not comfortable, just get used to seeing what you consider to be your ugly mug or all the defects that you have, and just get used to them. They're there.
Yeah.
Comfortable with it. And then it'll become way more natural.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, you're right, a lot of people are thrown off by, oh my God, you know, I hate the way I look on camera. You know, that's how people see you. You have to get used to that.
Yeah.
And with Zoom, what's good is you can do actually speaker view, or I don't know if you do it in Teams. Actually, Teams, you turn into this really small thing at the bottom. So
yeah.
So that's fine. So you don't even have to look at yourself. And at Zoom, you can also do that too.
Yeah.
So you have those options. But I love the idea of practicing and just having your camera on even when you're doing your regular work. Then it'll become more, hey, you know, then person will jump in and practice with your colleagues. But I think, you know, to the person who we're talking to, you just have to be comfortable with. You have to become comfortable with yourself when you see yourself, and then you have to become comfortable at pretending or being in the same room as Fab, you know, or being in the same room as Paul. You know, I'm there. I'm with you. You know, I see you're doing this with your hands. You know, I see when you're nodding your head, or you can also tell when they want to tell you something. They're like, you know, or when they want to interrupt, they might have a question, or they're just smiling, or they're just listening to you, or they think your joke's really dumb. You know. You know?
No, and it's silly. And going back to your kind of like your basics that you're talking about, like having good Wi-Fi, good computer. You know, like the more you do it, the more you're like, okay, I like the lighting this way, and like, oh, maybe I need an iPhone. A laptop stand, or maybe I need a mic. But, you know, like the more you do it, and if it's just like we said, recording yourself doing your calls, even if you're not sharing it, you start developing your little routines and just becoming more and more comfortable in front of this camera. Because
let me tell you a secret.
Yeah.
I've been working with the team, and if they're listening to this, they might know. And I haven't told them this at all, but when we first started working, some of them would be like this, some would be like, like here, and then sometimes the camera was off or whatever, and you could tell they weren't comfortable. And we're doing all the sales training, and I'm noticing all of them are way more comfortable on the camera than it used to be. It really feels now like we're in one room. So it really is a question of just doing it. So to all of you out there who think it's impossible, it is possible. And I don't care how old or how young you are. It's just a habit that you create, and it gets there. Yes, I can't touch Fab. I can't shake his hand, but maybe you can. Let's shake hands, Fab. Actually, I got to do this hand if you're doing this. Do it again. There you go. No, you do the other hand.
That's true. The camera's reversed on this thing.
All right. So essentially, it is just practice. But I understand some people. Like I have one colleague in the past who has actually she's super nearsighted. So sometimes she says, I got to turn my camera off because she says, I got to do this to see what's on the screen. And she says, I hate my big nose, It's not the end of the world. If you're looking up for something, you go a little forward. It's all right. We know no one expects perfection or the perfect hairdo or, the perfectly manicured hair. And and the great thing about Zoom is you don't have to wear pants. You can wear your sweatpants or your shorts. Anyways,
I know. I was HubSpot had their big, massive inbound event a couple of weeks ago, and the CEO, co-founder, I don't know what he does now, but the co-founder Brian Halligan was like, the world's changed. I do all my calls in a shirt and my PJ bottoms. So there you go. If the co-founder of HubSpot can do his calls in PJ pants, and still look professional, you could do it.
Careful when you stand up, though, right? Because I had one client today, and I said, "Oh, he was wearing his work pants," but one other guy was really smart because he stood up, but he pushed his camera away because obviously he was wearing his pajama pants or his underwear.
Awesome.
Anyway. So just practice and it'll be fun. So hey, this is a great all over the. We should call it the scrambled eggs session.
This is really fun.
Yeah.
All right, Paul. Have a great day. Rest of the day.
Ciao.
Bye.